Donald Trump is rebranding. He's on a rebranding tour this morning and over the next several days as he now says he's going to embrace a new word. And that word is affordability. Donald Trump, in a Fox News interview, blamed Republican election losses on what he called the new word affordability, even though affordability was a term that has been used for centuries. And it was a term that was used by Democrats on the campaign trail from New York City to Virginia to New Jersey and elsewhere. He went on to talk about how he is lowering energy costs, how he promised $2 gasoline for the United States, but that's not necessarily true. That hasn't panned out just yet. And now a top Trump advisor says that the president is going to shift his political messaging, focusing only on affordability and cost of living after Democrats won major off year elections this week. So the elections, Trump lost, Republicans lost, and now he's saying he's going to focus on affordability. Here's the only issue with that. Donald Trump's campaign in 2024 ran on affordability, even though he didn't use that word. The president promised on the campaign trail that he would lower costs for Americans across the country. He said that the costs were simply too high, that inflation was too high, gas prices were too high. And so he entered and he really won because of his economic message. He entered office and now he's saying, well, 9 months in, he's now going to start focusing on lowering costs for the American people, but he's not going to start focusing on it until next year in 2026. He hasn't focused on it this year because costs across the board are relatively up, especially prices for things like for things like beef. Prices are up, orange juice prices are up. And it's because of Donald Trump's tariffs. His tariffs are skyrocketing costs across the country. Gas prices have not hit $2. Most Americans can't afford a number of basic goods. And so we're in a situation where the president is now shifting his goals and focusing on affordability and cost of living as we head into the key 2026 midterm elections. It's no surprise that he is shifting his tone here because he needs to win. Otherwise, he will be a lame duck president, and he really is in a lot of respects. Before I continue, please consider subscribing to support my work. We'll be on the ground all 2026 across the country, making sure you get the news you need to know about or send a one-time donation via Venmo to Aaron-Parnas. So Trump is rebranding. He's talking about affordability. He wants to focus on the cost of living. He's telling Fox News that's his goals heading into 2026. Fine. But Republicans on Capitol Hill are slowly distancing themselves from him. Why? Because he is a lame duck president. No matter how much he wants to say that he's going to run for reelection for a third time, he's going to seek a third term. All of this talk coming from the White House about Trump 2028, he has the hat. Steve Bannon says there's a plan. Ultimately, if I had to predict, he's not going to run because it's unconstitutional. He can't, and he knows it. He knows he can't run. And so we're in a situation now where Republicans on Capitol Hill really have a choice. Do they embrace Donald Trump in his last few years in public life in the White House? Or do they distance themselves from him? And they're choosing the latter. Conversations behind the scenes show that Republicans are increasingly likely to break from the president of the United States on things like nuking the filibuster. They don't actually want to do that, and they're not going to do that, at least not yet, despite Donald Trump demanding that they nuke the filibuster. And also, as we head into 2026, many Republicans are actually not even embracing Donald Trump on the campaign trail. They don't want him out there because his disapproval rating is over 60%. In many of these districts, it might be even higher. If you look back to the exit polls in the elections earlier this week, Americans turned out not to vote for Trump, but against him. And there is a reason that the president wasn't out campaigning in places like Virginia or New Jersey. He never hit the ground once for Jack Ciattarelli or Winsome Sears. Yeah, they weren't going to win, and he probably knew that, but they didn't ask him to come out there either. Because while Donald Trump wasn't on the ballot, his agenda was. And here's the thing. They believe, candidates heading into 2026 believe that Donald Trump's agenda is going to damage their 2026 prospects. And so they're in a situation now where they're approaching and confronting his lame duck status, growing frustration over the government shutdown because Trump really isn't moving on that. And they are distancing themselves from the president. And it also comes today as the United States economy posted some terrible numbers in terms of layoffs. In October of this year, We saw 153,074 announced layoffs. That's a 183% increase from the month of September, and the highest for the month of October since 2003. Companies, especially tech companies, are slashing jobs while restructuring around AI. And this spike, along with the 1.1 million cuts so far this year to jobs, signals a labor market under increasing pressure despite some pockets of growth. But we're in a situation now where the job losses in the United States have hit their lowest point or at the worst point since 2009, the year after the Great Recession, when the economy was still barely struggling to recover. And so Republicans are distancing themselves from that agenda that has led to this. Trump is embracing affordability. Major rebrand happening in the White House. Today, Nancy Pelosi, the first woman to serve as Speaker of the House, a central force behind major Democratic victories, including the Affordable Care Act, announced she will not seek re-election in 2026. She will retire at the end of this term, leave public life, ending a historic 20-term career and marking the close of a Bay Area political era, really marking the close of an era for all, because Nancy Pelosi was a stalwart in political life in American politics for a very long time and was known to be one of the most effective speakers and House Democratic leaders. Why? Why? Because she always knew when she had the votes. She was always able to coalesce her party around what she needed. In addition, Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva still has yet to be sworn in, but she's now being left to wait an unprecedented 44 days to be sworn in, despite winning the special election in Arizona's 7th congressional district just 44 days ago by 40 points. That's the longest a member of Congress-elect has been forced to wait to be sworn in. Mike Johnson does not want to swear her in because he's afraid that she's going to be the 218th vote on the Epstein files. And while the House of Representatives still isn't even in session, House hasn't been in session since September 19th. We learned armed immigration agents in Los Angeles arrested a United States citizen's father in a Home Depot parking lot, then drove away in his car with his toddler still inside, a move that left family members traumatized, sparking outrage from advocates. Another example of what ICE is doing in the United States of America. And finally, with the government shutdown ongoing, air traffic controllers are strained, very strained. The FAA will begin cutting flight capacity by up to 10% across 40 major markets starting this week, a move that is aimed at easing mounting delays, but one that underscores how unpaid air traffic controllers, along with staffing shortages and operational pressures, are pushing the aviation system towards deep division. That's all the news right now. If you want to support my work, as always, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you this evening with another update. Stay tuned for more big news to come soon.